good, thank you. That's my favorite too, the
That's-
chocolate dark
That
chocolate.
bark is so good. Well, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you for always coming.
Thank you.
Oh, you had a good one, right? Was it a quick end or was it? I want to go quick like a lightning bolt.
Takes some nice work in it.
You really are like.
It's an art now, it's not.
It really is an art.
There is.
See?
There's that. Oh, you gotta press it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. One of those days.
Let's grab it.
All right, I'm gonna call to order the East Goshen Township Board meeting on Tuesday, August 17th. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag.
United States of America.
To the republic. which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you could please remain standing for a moment and think of our first responders, particularly our military and our Afghani neighbors who are going through a lot of upheaval in their lives right now. Thank you.
Amen.
All right, I want to announce that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube and is available on YouTube after the meetings for viewing. Chairman's report, the board met in executive session on Thursday, August 12th, to discuss a legal matter relating to the Bailey Pike Trail. East Goshen Community Day is Saturday the 28th at 4 p.m. It's the return of Community Day. I hope everyone can join us. It's going to be a great evening, capped off with some spectacular fireworks. And then finally, in addition to the regularly scheduled board meetings in September, we will be meeting every Tuesday for open meetings. The meetings in between our normal first and third Tuesdays will be workshop meetings related to the development of the 2022 budget. And those meetings are scheduled to be in person. We don't have any public hearings tonight. Emergency services reports. Brenda, do you want to start us?
Sure.
It is on.
Okay. So, I'd like to start tonight's meeting with some positive news. The Chester County Highway Safety Project has selected our department to receive a grant that will be used to address pedestrian traffic concerns. We will be using the grant to conduct enforcement along the Bailey Pike Trail. So that is very good news for us. Rather than giving numbers and statistics, because I know everybody's eyes glaze over, I'm just going to give a highlight of some of the calls that we have received in the last 6 weeks in East Goshen. There were 27 disturbances and/or fights, 2 child abuse investigations, 3 simple assault investigations, 5 thefts, 2 missing persons investigations, including 1 adult and 1 child. Both were located. There were 5 drug or alcohol offense investigations and 3 mental health calls. With regard to the statistics, I'm going to just summarize it this way. Our calls for service in this township and all the townships is higher than it was during the peak of the pandemic in 2020, but slightly lower than the calls for service in 2019. What has us concerned is that the violence associated with the calls that we are responding to continues to be higher than we've ever seen it. particularly in responding to domestic violence calls, child abuse calls, even neighbor dispute calls. We are very concerned because the violence is high. This is particularly concerning to us because in combination with our current staffing shortages, the officers are struggling to maintain the quality and the quantity of services that we offer to our residents. Our current staffing shortage, we have a 21.5% vacancy rate, and we anticipate that it will go as high as 26 or 27%. And therefore, again, board, I'm asking you to reconsider your decision not to backfill the vacancies for our full-time officers. In summary, I have a department filled with stressed out and burned out officers. And by alleviating some of the shortages in staffing, I believe that will help us maintain the quality and the quantity of services that we offer to our residents. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. So how many full-time officers are we down?
We're down 2, and we have a 3rd officer who is out for a long-term work-related disability. So that's actually 3 officers. But I would not expect the boards to backfill because we are hopeful that someday that officer will rejoin us.
And are you, for right now, using part-timers?
Unfortunately, our part-time vacancy rate is 50%. As you're all aware, being a police officer is not a popular occupation right now. We're having difficulty recruiting people, and then we're having difficulty retaining them because, in all honesty, other departments are also scrambling for the same candidates. They're offering them a full-time job with benefits, a pension, etc., and we can't compete with that. We're losing officers. We used to retain part-time officers for 2 years, and now we're down. Our last officer was with us for 6 months. And trying to recruit them is a struggle.
Chief, can you tell me, where are you with the implementation of the Cody software?
We have pretty much finished that. At this point, we are working through the bugs of that. Some of the things that we're finding is that the differences between our old records management system and this one is making some things more difficult. And until we work through the bugs, for example, our evidence system, we struggled. It took us twice as long as we thought it would to get that up and running. But I think we have that under control. Also, our electronic ticketing and our electronic filing for citations and criminal complaints, I think we've worked through most of those bugs, but we still have a few issues that we're struggling with. And just in time to start our reaccreditation, which will occur in February.
Are you keeping, do you have any current statistics on response time on proactive call or reactive calls for service?
No, we could pull that, but at this point, our old system, to compare what we had to what we have now, would not be apples to apples. That's one of the reasons I wanted this records management system, is that it gives us a more healthy view of when we got the call, when the incident actually occurred, when the officers responded, and how much time they spent on the initial call.
I would commend the staff and the chief on implementation of Cody, because I talked to some other police firms that said that it took them about 2 years to onboard Cody and get it right. So you did a much better job than that. So congratulations. That's great. I'd be interested in calls for service, reactive calls for service, response time data, just to see current data, to see what the staffing issues are relating to any kind of reduction in response time and call for service.
I could give you current information now, but to compare what it was before we made the transition, I don't think it would be apples to apples. The other thing is, because we're spending more time with the reactive to calls for service, our proactive is reducing. Our citations are down, our warnings are down, our business checks are down. All those things are reduced.
Data on that would be really interesting as well.
Yeah, and like I said, if I could give you apples to apples, I think it would be more powerful. But one of the problems we had with our old RMS is that it was geared primarily for keeping data on police, not on analysis. This one, I am very hopeful that it will give us a much more rigorous look at everything we do.
Chief, I appreciate you bringing up these matters of staffing, manpower, if you will, police power, resources in the public setting to a degree. We have our partner that we need to discuss these things with. And for those who have heard that this evening, we also have been trying to work with our partner, Westtown Township, to effect a police services assessment of study, if you will, to look at the future, current but future police needs, resources, and that will, in the process of that will also provide some data. This is a project we've been talking about for more than a year. We think that our Westtown partner is now going to be working with us to accomplish this. I know staff is preparing an RFP for the service inquiry, reach out to see what we can pull in from it to see if we can find a competent entity to do such a study. But I'm looking at, once again, at the long term in the future for the WEGO department and resourcing. And one of the difficulties that we're having, at least I'm having, is making some of these short-term decisions on staffing until we get that kind of a study done. And I recognize that could be another year and a half out or more before we get it done. But the cost of police services is such that it's a fiscally responsible thing and due diligence that we need to do to look at the service profile and resource needs and have that effectively assessed in an objective manner. No different than providing a comprehensive plan or any other planning documents that give a picture of existing conditions and where we might go in the future. So we're hopeful to meet with our partners sometime in the next month, certainly before the fall kicks in mid-September, to see if we can move forward on such a study to look at the long-term aspects of police services in our township and related to the WEGO regional department.
I understand that, and I fully expect that will move forward at some point. But as discussed in the last police commission meeting, it could be, as you indicated, a year to a year and a half. In the interim, the officers are struggling to provide the services. They are the recipient of angry residents who are told that they have to wait. One individual was very angry that we had a call in service and he had to wait 3 hours in which to lodge a police report. And the officer took the brunt of the resident's displeasure. Our officers are very geared towards customer service. We are very much geared to community-based policing. And when they don't have the resources to do that, I find that the officers are getting frustrated and they're feeling burned out because they're trying to cover. And as I indicated at last night's meeting, our officers work 12-hour shifts. When we have a shortage, that means the officers are working 16 or 18 hours. I have concerns about that. I don't have any options, but I have very much a safety concern, not only for the residents, but for the officers and ultimately the townships that will have to handle any lawsuits that come from an exhausted officer making a bad decision. So I know that you want to do your due diligence, but at the same time, I'm looking at it in real time.
Well, I would say that when there's a resource limitation or a decrease in available resources, as has been indicated, sometimes you have to manage with what you have. And I believe sometimes we have to, and most times, no different than any other entity, if we've got internal issues we're working with, we have to manage those internally, and we don't have to show people our dresser drawers as to what's going on relative to our our staffing profile, et cetera, and any other issues related to try and address the concerns you're bringing up. There are a lot of departments that are in a similar circumstance or are faced with even more pressures in the environment that we've been in. Fortunately, we're not there, and I recognize the part-time police resource aspect of our staffing has a lot of challenges, Chief, as you've mentioned, and it's been going on for some time. The qualifications, finding suitable candidates after being trained, them jumping ship to a full-time operation, et cetera, et cetera. These are some bigger questions that such a study may lead us in that direction, that maybe we move to a complete full-time staff of officers rather than the part-time component. And making some of these decisions at this point when we've had some financial concerns with the extent of the budget. Of course, we go through arbitration every time. It's a difficult situation, and I think under your leadership, we look to you to manage those resources in as positive a manner as possible. And if services can't always be provided perfectly in certain responses, that's something sometimes you have to eat some of that. And that sounds terrible with police services, but it depends on the calls and your ability to manage the resources, understand what the important calls are and the responses and through your and down through your staff or across to your staff is important in these times where we are stretched resource-wise, and in some of the concerns that the boards have, both of them, including myself as one supervisor, with making decisions on backfilling or adding additional staff at this time. So it's a tough one. And I think we're going to continue to have these kind of conversations. I appreciate the updates and you sharing them in the public manner, but we need to get together with our partner sooner than later, as we've talked about, and continue to try and advance a conversation that's going to lead us in a direction that we're going to have some data and some good information to, if necessary, change our profile, our organizational profile for WeGo, whether it's building it up or reallocating or reassigning, whatever it may be. But we, as elected officials, we don't know all the details that you do, and yet we're looking for those larger answers or at least direction that we think will be accomplished in such a study. And I recognize, again, I know it's months down the road with an immediate situation you're bringing to our attention. So we're going to continue to have these conversations on a monthly basis, and when we get with our partner, maybe we'll see what gives for the short term. But those are kind of thoughts that have been circulating in my mind. I've known about this, of course. Now you're sharing it publicly, and that's fine. But that gives a little bit of breadth to where we're looking at here. We're not simply ignoring some of this immediate staffing issue, but we're trying to make sense of it relative to the longer term picture and the big picture, which we don't have all the answers to, and we need an objective view of that. So.
Thank you for listening to my concerns. I appreciate it.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I just want to let you know, I received a phone call about 5 o'clock this evening from a resident in some house who was out walking his dog at 5 o'clock this morning. Ugh. And apparently was almost run over, not once but twice, by a newspaper delivery person. So it was around about 5:10. He was able to jump out of the way, apparently, when he saw the car coming in rather recklessly. He went over toward an upper 600 building. So entering from Westchester Pike, he said to the left. He said he was still walking his dog. 10 minutes later, he was on his way back to his condo and actually had to physically jump out of the way and pull his dog urgently out of the way.
We can definitely address that through a patrol check.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chief.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you.
Carmen cannot be with us this evening, so I think that Derek, once again, has been assigned.
Yep, I will take care of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start with Goshen Fire Company for the report for July 2021. For fire calls, East Goshen had 11 responses for fire calls for the month of July. Fire police calls, we had 6. EMS calls, 148, for a total of 165 calls for the month for Goshen Fire. Malvern Fire Company, July 2021 report. East Goshen had 27 calls, 4 basic life support, which resulted in 4 transports, 23 advanced life support, which resulted in 11 transports. And last but not least, Good Fellowship report. East Goshen for the month of July had 44 calls, which was 8.1% of the calls, total calls at Good Fellowship. And Carmen did want me to address one more thing. He is currently, I would say, investigating weird circumstances down in the Milltown area of, there was a couple of reports, I guess people called in, of a noxious odor and visible smoke or burning, if you will, but both times that he went down there, it seemed to cease. So he's keeping an eye on that. Before this week, there were some dry periods there, so I don't really know what the call is, what the issue is, but he is keeping an eye on it. He just wanted me to let you know that.
Thanks, Derek. Financial report. Dave, you want to an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This should actually read as of July 31st, not July 1st. That correction. General fund net revenues of $6,963,830. Expenses of $5,840,159 for a positive variance of $1,123,671. The year-to-date positive variance versus the budget is $712,488. And as of July 31st, the general fund balance was $6,636,249. It's a little bit misleading to show how positive we are versus the budget because it's an annual budget, not a monthly budget. So there are timing differences, and primarily that's accounting for it. But what we're really seeing is stronger than expected and budgeted commercial and real estate transfer taxes. We've also had a little bit less maintenance and equipment expenses year to date than we budgeted. So combination of those has us in a nice situation as of the end of July. But I believe with my projection that we will be pretty much on budget, if not a little bit better. So confident of that. And I've updated all the fund balances underneath.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? The other timing differences were interesting. It looks like we're on track to be pretty much on budget. That's really great. All right. Let's move to the consent agenda approving the minutes of the Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. Anyone have any comments or edits, corrections to the minutes? I'll entertain a motion to approve them as submitted.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes August 3rd, 2021, as they are submitted. I didn't see any need for corrections.
Second the motion.
Any comments from board members? Members of the public? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. All right, treasurer's report. We have, Dave, do you have any comments on the treasurer's report?
Again, it's just the detail of the real estate transfer tax driving our revenue. We did have some insurance payments come back in for things submitted for damages done from accidents.
Insurance recoveries are kind of a push though, right? You got to
Yeah, we already spent the money and we're getting it back.
exactly.
We had nearly $40,000 in Hershey Mill dam expenses from the cap reserve fund and some engineering expenses for the Bailey Pike Trail.
Dave, I just want to clarify, under revenue, so year-to-date, our EIT, our earned income taxes, is up 10.1% over budget, or is that compared to this time last year? I lost track here.
It's budget.
Per budget, and then of course, real estate transfer tax, you indicated is strong, that's up 38% plus. And local services tax, which is employment tax, is up 11% to budget. Okay.
Yeah, in contrast to when we were going through the budget process, we were kind of doom and gloom, not knowing what was going to happen with COVID, and we made some budget, some sacrifices in the budget, and we've been pleasantly surprised by the performance of real estate. We've had, I think, 5 or 6 houses selling for over $1 million in East Goshen Town too.
Just this past month.
Just in July.
Was it
Yeah.
private? We had a few as well.
And so, some commercial real estate transfers. So, those, of course, just for benefit of the public, we kind of think of those real estate transfer taxes. They're not really easy to budget because we don't know how many of those are going to happen in a given year. So we call that kind of a below the line revenue piece. It's always nice to have a nice surprises and have a bonus and give us a little cushion in the budget. Of course, it can surprise us in the other direction, but so far it really hasn't. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the expenses submitted.
I move that we graciously accept the treasurer's report and expenses as submitted.
Second?
Any comments or questions about the bills that submitted in the registry?
I'm just gonna make one observation. I know we've looked and asked staff to look at some of the professional associations and annual dues for various entities and whether we're getting value added from those. And I see that we did discount out the PA Municipal League. It's only $450, but I appreciate you taking a look at that and looking at those from a value added standpoint. And if it's not something that we're really benefiting from, it's appreciated that you're keeping things pencil sharp on those. Even though it's not a major expense, it still shows the due diligence, as a staff you guys are putting into it. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, with Chris's help, we've kind of put in a check and balance, so Art might accidentally think that we're gonna get the membership and Chris reviews it and we reverse it.
Yeah, well, I saw that, but it was good.
Again, you have checks and balances in terms, which is great. That is an example. Thank you.
Any other comments? Comments from the public? Call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Next is old business. We're going to consider a resolution amending the 2021 budget to include COVID-19 federal relief funds. We've discussed this public meeting before. Derek, you want to give us a little bit of?
Yeah, there's not too much to add, Mr. Chairman. We did discuss these in the last 2 previous meetings. The background is, for those who are not aware, we are due to receive what's called American Rescue Plan funds for local governments throughout the country because of COVID, because of the pandemic. We have already received the first half. It's in the bank. Now this is actually a resolution to allocate those funds, and it was discussed numerous times. I spoke with individual board members, and the funding is laid out in the resolution, but it essentially allocates the majority of the funds. I believe it's $914,000 and change to sewer infrastructure projects, as we discussed in the last meeting, as well as the broadband infrastructure update for this room, which is in desperate need of it. And I think it was Mike's suggestion to maybe bump up the broadband infrastructure a little bit, just to have a little bit of a cushion. I did do that. That is the only change from the previous meetings. Otherwise, it is the resolution outlines everything we discussed in the previous meetings. And just to reiterate again, we will get the pretty much same exact amount of money next year, and we will talk about the allocation of that money in the 2022 budget process. So if the board is amenable, you can talk about maybe passing the motion.
Mr. Chairman, if you're interested, I'd like to move that we pass resolution 2021-203, amending the 2021 budget to include East Goshen's American Rescue Plan funds in the amount of $949,820.77, and that the funds be allocated to the projects as outlined in the resolution.
I'd second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Basically, a resolution of matters that we've discussed in public meetings before. So, any questions from the public?
Let me, as Christina's coming up, let me just make one comment for our citizens that are listening, that the allocations that we've made, these infrastructure and related to broadband, are within the confines of what our authority is under this stimulus money that's come to us. So it's federal money, and there are lots of strings that we have to pay attention to. And these are very clean. We will be audited with these funds, the federal agency, as GAO, or who will end up auditing this. So we have to make sure that the allocations that we prescribe here are copacetic, if you will, with their guidelines and the authorization that we've been given. So we can't just simply spend it on anything we want, and infrastructure is the big one, as we know. That's the big one, one of the big ones in the news this past year plus. And the other one, broadband, is another form of infrastructure, but it has to do with communication and our ability to interface with residents and our citizens as we do the business here. So, and that amount of the broadband is about $35,000. The rest is all related to sewer, as indicated. Go ahead, Christine, I'm sorry.
My question was just, I've been present for the meeting, so we were talking about the upgrades to this room. And I was always just wondering, as written, would it also include any necessary upgrades that you may have to do to the website to accommodate the interactive features that you were talking about? Thank you.
So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. The interaction would have nothing to do with the website. It would be, so we did get, myself, Susan, and Dave and I met with 3 companies so far, just to sort of get proposals. We have yet to get any proposals back. It includes a sort of a hybrid setup, a new camera. We were talking about a new TV on that wall so that people in the back could potentially see any presentations going on. But it would be still to the same effect as it was in the COVID era with Zoom and YouTube. Any update to the website would be, the way I've seen it done is an embedment of YouTube or Zoom within the website. That has more to do with any kind of website update than it does for an infrastructure project like this. It's certainly something we could look into, but as far as this project, there was no tying into the website, as it's not done that way right now. So I feel like we would need probably a website update in order to tie that in.
And this allocation related to the technology here has to do with creating more interactivity with our citizens, so that if they're watching on YouTube or what have you, they can have a live interaction with us from a remote location, which we have not had that
Correct.
ability. That's an important feature.
Yep, and just back to Christine's point, some people do, again, I've seen, it's kind of rare in this area, but some people do embed the YouTube or Zoom link into the website. It's just a little bit more difficult. Not every host likes to do it, but it's certainly a possibility.
Streaming from the website.
Yeah,
Streaming from the website.
Correct, yes.
COVID had taught us a lesson. We've got failed microphones up here. This is old technology. They don't maintain this stuff anymore. We can't show what we want on the TV screens, and we don't have as much interactive contact with our citizens, and we have remote meetings, and we wanted to make sure that public meetings and people need to be able to interface with us in those meetings. So this is an endeavor to improve all of that. So,
But it's something to think about going forward, Christine. So I'm glad you brought it up, and these guys will make notes on it and see what shows over the course of the months ahead. And who knows? the second allocation will be coming in July, maybe early June of next year. That's another $900,000+. We may be able to interface it at that point in time, and you might have a direct role in it.
Just as an aside on this, I mentioned the last meeting, I'll mention again, in the back of the envelope, we've got about $2.5 million of sewer infrastructure improvements that we're gonna have to do over the next couple of years. And this is a 1.9 million tranche of money from the feds that are gonna help us offset that, and those are funds that we're not gonna have to rely on our residents to make up. So it's a significant impact.
And they're not discretionary infrastructure expenditures. They are either by agreement with our, with West Goshen Township and our sewer agreement with them, sewer capacity agreement, and an immediate semi-emergency situation with a failed system that's in the north part of the township. So these are not discretionary per se. They are absolute needs. We would have had to spend the money irrespective. So this has been a kind of a real plus for us.
All right, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries for nothing. The old business, under new business, first thing is the consideration of utilizing the county for real estate tax notice processing and certification. From my information, I think that 26 municipalities currently use the county system. And I'll just have Derek and Dave kind of talk us through the pros and cons and our consideration here.
Yeah, I am surely going to hand this over to our esteemed finance director over there. But I wanted to add that we are going to talk about A and B together, Mr. Chairman, because they're sort of interrelated in what we're talking about. So it will be the consider utilization of the county for real estate tax notice processing and certifications. But also Dave is going to tie in talking about the new financial and code enforcement software vendor proposal as well.
And the reason they're related is that the software would be with or without taxes. So if we use an outside tax like the county, then we would not include the tax bundle in the new software.
That is correct, yes.
Take it away? No? Okay. So in the course of doing an RFP for our an upgraded financial system, which is an integrated system replacing our current AMS system, that was installed in 2003. It's pretty out of date. It was actually written before DOS was made. So those familiar with computers would realize that's pretty long ago. It's more of an ERP, so it's kind of an enterprise system, which would integrate timesheets, payroll, get that into automatic GL entries, streamline, make it more efficient, and have less duplicative manual entry into the system. And then everybody's looking at similar data. It's kind of parcel based, so permitting has an upgraded system. All of the general ledger system. We would also have fixed asset system in there. So when we looked at different pricing, so when we looked at pricing for this, there's a lot of line items in Edmunds' proposal. We settled with Edmunds based on having 3 of the lower cost options out of the 8 come by and talk to us. We did an original Zoom overview with them, and then we had them come in and give us an additional full day overview of each individual different component. They call them modules. So all of the staff was involved. We spent all day off and on, depending on what time everybody had free. We had submitted questions beforehand. The vendors came in, gave us their best pitch, why this was the best system. And after all that, we figured Edmunds, everyone.
Jimi Hendrix, please leave the room.
Really?
Turn that off and
Use John's. There we go.
I can see if this is better. That seems a little better.
I think you're trying to prove we need a new system.
So in the course of looking at Evans, everyone agreed that that was the best blend of cost, a lower cost than the other systems that we saw. I can tell you, well, the three that we looked at, the initial implementation, it's the first year, basically all in year one costs. All the other systems were over $235,000. So we stuck to 150 and below, and they also had less ongoing year after year costs. After going through the immediate proposal, we had a call with them to see which ones we did or did not need as far as modules goes, because we don't need bells and whistles if it's not going to help us improve our efficiency or anything that we don't currently do. So after discussion with them, we realized the tax modules was the biggest sticking point as far as price. We could get a considerably better price if we did not have the tax modules, and that was the upfront cost of implementation, training, conversion, and the annual software cost, which would be ongoing. After looking at that, I worked with staff to put together a cost analysis to look at how much would it cost us with and without tax. So I did that for the software, and I also looked at what is the cost that we would consider currently that it takes staff to put together real estate tax billing, tax certifications, and the tax revenue that we would get from that. And looking at that versus if we offloaded it to the county, who, as David mentioned, has 25 municipalities already. So Derek reached out to get feedback from the county. We've got 5 responses. 100% were positive.
Just to clarify, I didn't get feedback from the county. I got feedback from the municipalities that use the county.
Yeah.
From about 5 or 6 today. All positive. So
All positive. Some indicated it was lower cost for them. 100% said that they had no customer issues outside of possibly one of them said a little bit of confusion in the original transition because they were so used to paying the municipality and working with the municipality. Other than that, the actual customer service was good. They didn't really notice an AR difference, positive or negative. So with that in mind, I dug into how much would it cost county versus not county. And for my calculations, it's about $2,500 favorable annually to outsource it versus having staff do it. Now, you can extrapolate that over the 10-year period, but that coupled with the financial software consideration, from my calculations, about 10 years, it would be about $240,000 savings, no tax modules versus tax modules. And it would go hand in hand, so we keep the taxes and we get the modules and we provide service, or we outsource it and we don't pay for the tax modules and we just let the county do it. Now, we are, after reaching out with them, able to take it back anytime we want. We could always go back to Edmonds and get those modules if the service was poor when residents wanted that done. So that would always be an option. Within the last 5 years, they saw a 10-cent increase, went from $1.65 to $1.75. That was 2018 to 2019. Nobody else has seen an increase. And that's for the initial bill that's sent for taxes. Every other final reminder is 55 cents each. So that's what I was using as a cost basis. So after discussing with staff, our recommendation is that we would go with outsourcing it to the county and also to implement Edmonds, and preferably without tax, but that's a consideration for the board. And I don't add something.
yeah, I just to add, I think obviously whether to keep tax or not internally is a little bit bigger of a decision, and the board's just seeing this for the first time tonight. So, I'm talking with Dave and Chris. It's obviously the board's decision, but it's not, it would probably be wise for you guys to think about it a little bit. But I think what we are looking for tonight is at least, we know we're in need of financial software. We know it was budgeted for this year. So at least give the go ahead to get started with Edmunds and have the tax module as an open-ended question would be preferable if possible, just because this is a long implementation. It would be a better part of a year, at least 9 months, right, Dave? If I'm not mistaken, 9 to 12 months.
12 months at the outside, but I think they were just not giving us I think they were being safe.
So I guess if possible, I guess what staff would really like is to at least get the go-ahead to get that process started. And if the board needs a little bit more time to consider the tax module and the outsourcing of taxes, that's understandable. But if we could just go ahead on that one thing, we would much appreciate it.
Maybe we could discuss a little bit more about what the module, what the Edmunds program would actually entail, before we make any kind of decision on that. But I like the idea of at least discussing, I'd like to look at the tax collection separately. Maybe we could revisit that at the next meeting. I'm not comfortable quite yet without talking about it with David and Mike a little bit too. So I'd like to get their input and see what their thoughts are. But I'd like to at least hear a little bit more about the software package.
And if I may ask a leading question here, Derek said it was in the budget. It is in the budget, and how much?
$100,000 for this year, for 2021.
Okay, and then we'd have to budget for next year, whatever their, what is it, upkeep cost or something like that?
One of my questions is, it might be here somewhere, but I didn't see it. There's 107,750 for year one.
Yes.
And then it looks like you're running out for 10 years, so you kind of know which of these are one time and which of these are ongoing, licensing fees and desk fees and all those kinds of things. So what does that look like?
It's $43,250 a year.
Okay. Those are licensing.
That's the majority of the licensing.
I have a question for Chris. I'm assuming, Chris, you've been involved in looking at these. Is the admin system fairly intuitive from your input and mapping and all those kinds of things that need to be done? Putting this into effect.
Well, yes, and it wasn't just myself that viewed Edmunds or any of the other vendors for that matter. We did have collectively the staff associated with using each of the modules present. Dave and I initially looked at the RFPs. We looked at the RFPs and determined which is the most cost effective that would meet our needs as a township, not only for today, but for going forward. And also what we felt would be a stable, long-term company that we would be committing to for, initially, the proposals were for 5 years for the financial aspect, and with our expert finance director over there, negotiating a 10-year contract with no increase.
That was the question I had. So no increase over that 43,250.
No increase, no inflator over the annual inflator over the 10-year contract period. That was an important one.
So initially, their proposal was for 5 years, and after 5 years, a 4% increase. So we discussed that with the vendors, and also to your point, asking about the review of the system, we felt that this particular vendor met all of our needs. It was unanimous. We got feedback from all the staff that uses the system. We had the vendors come in and give us presentation in the boardroom here with staff viewing it hands-on. And again, it was unanimous for the feel, the look, and the capabilities of the system.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, a number of questions, if I might. Edmunds, I know from my experience, is a stable company, and that's a very important consideration for this municipal software. There are companies that are not as not as strong in their, in the long-term picture. And it almost, this municipal software has been really a cottage industry. And to find a company that's got staying power, I think that's really important. So I know you picked up on that. What do we know of any other municipalities in Chester County that are using Evans? Can you,
That was one of my questions.
do you have any specific municipalities that are using Edmonds in the county right now, you guys? And I missed that. I must have glanced over it.
Yes, there are. Off the top of my head, I know Upper Euclid uses them.
Okay, I was looking for a couple of municipalities that have some compatibility with operational needs as we do.
There's a few more as well, but I can't, off the top of my head.
The 43,000 plus a year for the maintenance, the continuing fees and services, the cloud, et cetera, that is an increase budget-wise of about 25,000 a year net the module for tax collection, which if we stayed in-house with the tax collection, that would be another 5,000 or 6,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken. I may have got my numbers a little bit off. So it is an operational increase in expenses, but over the last 3, 4, 5 years, previously when John Outshaw was here, and hearing from you, Chris, the current system that you have has just been so frustrating. It's been inefficient, and it's resource-wise, doing what you need to do, and then having frustrations with the system, whether it's reports or just accomplishing some of the operational aspects of preparing bills, et cetera. I've heard about those, so I know that this system is outdated. The first year cost, we budgeted 100,000. This is at 107,000. I know Dallas was at 151. There was another one at 123 or something like that. The ones that you selected. I'm glad that you didn't settle on Freedom. I would not have been pleased with Freedom. That's an example of one of the companies I don't feel are stable for the long term. So I'm supportive of this vendor. And I appreciate Michelle, she wants to vet this further and understand more of it, but I'm relying on the staff that you've gone through a pretty arduous process here of the RFP and selecting and doing the interviews, getting your input from other municipalities, et cetera, that you've selected a company that's going to work well with the township going forward. But it is, and that was one of my questions about the 10-year agreement. I mean, 10 years. And I wondered about the cost inflator. It's great that stays stable, but it does represent an operational cost increase going forward. But I get it, and the financial software is the guts of one of the most important features of the municipal government, to be accountable. And so if you've indicated you need it for some years now, you selected a vendor, a company I'm aware of. I'm accepting of the recommendation of staff at this point in time, but if there's more vetting that the board would like to do on it, I don't have to necessarily make a motion this evening, but that's up to you guys as a board.
Thank you, Marty. I mean, Mike. Mr. Chair, I'm ready to vote on B. I am not at all ready to vote on A.
Yeah, it seems like what we're being asked for tonight is to vote on the financial software. And my understanding is that if we decide not to outsource to the county, that we can add a module to do the tax. So it looks like the proposal is $15,750 difference just on without further the other analysis.
First year.
So we can talk about the outsourcing tax to the county and work on that at another time. So I heard you make a motion to support the suggestion to move forward with the financial software as proposed by Edmunds without tax module.
I second that.
Any further discussion?
I have a couple of questions real fast. I just wanted to ask, this actually does cover it's not just the finance department. This also encompasses our codes department and other departments as well.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. One of the biggest, Mark Gordon really likes this system. He also had Gary sit in, oh God, the entire time that he was there. So both of them went through every different
Right.
software system, and the mobile apps alone, the possibilities for use in the field really appealed to them. And then they were talking back and forth about solutions as far as GIS and figuring out locations.
Okay.
They had great feedback.
Michelle, I'm glad you asked that because
Yeah.
it is a broad.
It's a much-
I
it's a
focus on
much-
financial.
yeah, it's a much
broad
broader-
base.
It's a much broader, more
Yes.
encompassing package. My
Oh, yes.
understanding is that it actually will keep track of all of our inventory of everything too.
Yes.
I like that we refer to it as an enterprise-wide system.
Enterprise, yeah.
It's an enterprise management system.
We're all gonna be viewing the same information, so we'll see on our own screens that codes has a parcel where they've got a violation.
Uh-huh.
You can look at the fines, you can look at the taxes, you
Fantastic.
can look at anything you wanted to on there.
That's fabulous.
I want to ask one question.
Is some of the folks listening, citizens listening may or may not know, municipal government typically is a multi-fund accounting system. So there are separate funds for, depending on the activity, whether it's an enterprise fund, and skipping the word relative to the software, but an enterprise fund is one like the sewer fund, which is supported by the revenues from the customers through fees. And then there are other proprietary funds, whether it's the bond fund, the capital reserve fund, et cetera. Are we allocating a portion, a percentage of these costs in this particular case to the sewer fund for its operation of, we do the billing, et cetera, for our sewer customers? Are we going to be allocating dollars for this, particularly the annual software cost, to those funds that are using those services, particularly an enterprise fund like the sewer fund? If not, I think we should consider it.
Yeah, absolutely, we should consider it. It was, it's not in the budgeted numbers split out. It's sitting by itself, and previously AMS has always been a single.
I think a couple of the funds should bear the fair share of it, and I think the sewer is the
I agree.
primary one, since
I agree.
it is an enterprise system and it's customer fee based.
Mr. Chair, can we add that in as a friendly add-on to the motion?
Whether we do, I think you get the message, and Dave has picked up on it, that if we're not allocating it, it should be a consideration as part of our normal budgeting and expense allocation, I think.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Any members of the public have questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Discuss the tax outsourcing at another meeting.
Great.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss, and I'm going to be
So
careful.
let me interrupt for 1 second, Mr. Chair, if I may. Is there if the board is going to further vet this, the question about taking the taxes to third party, Chester County, is there for the 2022 season, if you will, is there a deadline when the county wants to hear from us as to making a decision? Or do we have some latitude over the next couple of months? My guess is we do, before they would incorporate us into their system. But if you don't know that, if there's a drop date, and I forget some of the folks I used to speak with there, but you might ask them if there's a drop dead date for us to be part of their 2022 portfolio, if you will, yeah.
Right, so we did get, a preliminary agreement from the county, and I believe I saw a date of October.
Okay.
That they.
Good. All right, good.
So we have a couple of weeks.
All right, so sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Clarify that. Okay, I'm going to be careful in my choice of words on the next item on the agenda, and it is to consider some funding in the amount of $10,000 from the bond fund for the explicit purpose of having Canoni and Associates conduct a feasibility plan for an alternative route to the Paley Pike Trail. And let me kick this off by saying I use the word alternative instead of alternate for a reason. So, and I will say that I am supportive of spending this $10,000 to look at what would entail, what kinds of things that we would run into in considering a tentative alternative route that's been laid out and discussed at several meetings, including public meetings. But I want to be careful and not, from my perspective, encourage any false hopes or expectations. I view this as in addition to, as opposed to instead of. What I mean by that is that I want to go forward with segment B along the Paley Pike as originally planned, and then consider the implication of having an alternative route to that would create almost a loop at the end of the trail that would connect some neighborhoods and the YMCA and the school. So I think that I'm a huge supporter of trails and developing trails in the community so that people have access. Other than getting in their car, they have, instead of being an auto-centric community, we have some alternative transportation. But this does not mean, from my own personal perspective, that this is an instead of route, it is an addition to route. So I wanted to make that clear, and that's my position. So the motion would be to allocate an amount not to exceed $10,000 from the bond fund for the explicit purpose of having Pianoni and Associates conduct a feasibility plan for an alternative route to what is being called the Paley Pike Trail.
I would move that, I so moved.
I'll make the motion, so Michelle's seconding that
Second.
motion. Any further discussion from board members?
I would like to comment that I appreciate the open-mindedness shown by
Absolutely.
other members of this board in looking at this route. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we really can't move forward unless we at least know if there's any feasibility to this or not.
I was gonna say something, but I will quit while I'm ahead and let you guys vote on it.
Okay. All right.
I'm not gonna say a word.
Any members of the
No, I'm
public?
supportive of this aspect. I'm very supportive of it.
Good evening. Good evening.
You can bring it up to you.
You're right, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Cody Bright, 1331 Park Avenue. I just want to thank the board for taking a second look at this. And
Cody,
looking at
have you grown again since the last?
He has 4 inches.
it feels like it. But I just want to.
Someone said something about gruesome. Gruesome.
Oh, my goodness.
I just want to second Supervisor Hertzog's comments. I appreciate the board looking at it another way around the route, and I appreciate you guys listening to the Hicks last time they were here. I think the community really appreciates that as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Cody.
Thanks, Cody.
Love your shirt.
Any other public comment? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. The next new business item is a discussion of Senate Bill 597 and a request from the municipal authority. This is another one of our favorite topics, what we call the unfunded mandates from the state of Pennsylvania. So I will let Derek give us some background on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So discussed at the last municipal authority meeting was Senate Bill 597, also known as the Water Quality Accountability Act. What it does is it essentially recognizes that there is not well-functioning systems of wastewater and water systems within the Commonwealth. And I think the legislators that put this forth wanted to do so to protect consumers from basically municipal authorities or sewer authorities that aren't doing their job. I think our municipal authority, and we have a member of the municipal authority here, he can speak as well. but I think they feel like they are doing their job for the residents of East Goshen. We are meeting all the requirements that Senate Bill 597 would put forth, and it would put additional burden on municipal authorities across Pennsylvania, specifically upfront burden with this community water system assessment management plan that would be required upfront and would be time, money, and resources to the authority and then in turn to East Goshen Township. So I think the issue here is not the language in the bill itself, it's who it is targeting. And there is no delineation made to well-functioning systems versus not well-functioning systems. So bottom line is the authority would like me to work with other managers in the area that feel the same way, perhaps get a letter together and reach out to the co-sponsors of the bill, sort of lobby on behalf of our municipal authority and perhaps other local wastewater plants to let them know how we feel about the legislation.
Very classic example of in management where my home office used to have one of the fastest growing, most profitable offices in the country, and they would come with these edicts that I had to do things that punished me because other offices weren't performing, and I used to hate that. I used to have the feed the tigers and shoot the dogs mentality, and that's what we have here. We should be able to, we're kind of one of the tigers. We have a well-managed system, and an unfunded mandate from the state government.
Yeah, I wanted to comment as well, and of course, I'm a liaison with the municipal authority, that this, our organization for municipal authorities, no different than we have PSTATs, the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, for our municipal operations here, our township operations, as a support, a lobbying group, as well as an educational wing. Arm is the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association, and they their letter, which came to us to bring our attention to this, their quote is they're vehemently opposed. In particular, one of the items that distresses me a bit is that the intent of this legislation is to turn over functions that are really being handled pretty effectively, believe it or not, by the Department of Environmental Protection, PADEP. They want to turn it over to the PUC. I've not been pleased with some of what I've seen from the PUC. They're focusing on utilities. I think the DEP has managed these quasi-utilities in the form of municipal authorities pretty effectively. I think this legislation has come out of some of the rural areas of Pennsylvania that have issues with resources available and or both professional resources as well as costing resources. The indications of what's required suggested in this legislation are substantial. So I don't know how that would be a cost savings to those municipalities who are already trying to meet their basic obligations. And further, the legislation has not come with an assessment, quantitative or quantifying or even qualifying the issues supported by data of what the circumstances are that have precipitated this. So I think it's premature. I'm not interested in seeing the PUC go forward with it. And I taking it over, and I would be interested to Derek, if you can find this out, and I doubt because they're an agency of the state, just how DEP feels about it. I don't know whether you have any contacts here. What's DEP think about this? Maybe they're saying, take it. We don't care. That could be an answer. But I think that sending a letter to not just our legislators and letting them know our thoughts if we so act on this tonight, but also the sponsoring legislators to let them know that here's a municipality that it is, and piggyback, copy the letter from our Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association, which that was a very well crafted letter. So, and I think we were very fortunate at our last municipal authority meeting to have Dan Truitt, former state representative, of course, Michelle's husband, on our at our meeting to provide some insights from the legislative process standpoint. And this has got a ways to go from his perspective, but now is the time to mount those kind of lobbying positions. And also I'm interested to have the no PSTAT's position on it as well. So if we can get their understanding of where they are and hopefully in opposition, that will be also beneficial. And
Thanks, Mike. What action, what are we asking?
There is no motion to make, Mr. Chairman.
So we're just talking about discussion of.
I just as a matter of protocol for my own peace of mind, anytime the ABC comes to me with any sort of legwork, I like letting the board know what's happening.
Phil, John, do you have any thoughts on?
No comments, just I favor sending a letter.
Michelle?
Yeah, at this point, I think that you're right, Mike, we need to get the DEP's position on this and PSAC's. And then I think that should be enough, at least for us to know, should we send letters?
Yeah, we'll round out our
Yeah,
sense of,
we need
this
to-
is gonna go someplace.
Yeah, then we need to start lobbying against it.
Sounds like we can tell the municipal authority that we're supportive of the.
Yeah.
Action. So,
Absolutely.
That's all we need to do
Okay.
on this,
Good.
tonight. The next thing to do, and at the beginning of every year, we have a organizational meeting and we appoint people to certain positions as mandated by the Pennsylvania second township code. And so one of the things we need to do is to appoint a recording secretary for the board meetings. Eric, you want to give a little background?
Yeah, we've just been, as I say in my memo, we've been a little bit in flux since we came back from the Zoom meetings. Susan, office administrator, was doing those via Zoom. She never did those in person, and it was never intended to have her do those long-term when we go back in person. So there was a little bit of a question as to what we were going to do with the recording secretary position. Dave Ware and I filled in one time. That was fun. But you know, having an internal conversation with some people, Chris stepped up and volunteered to do it, and we appreciated that. So this resolution 2021-204 would just be establishing her as the official recording secretary for Board of Supervisor meetings.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to pass resolution 2021-204, establishing Christina Boylan as recording secretary for the Board of Supervisor meetings.
Second motion.
Any questions?
I just want to ask, is the flesh and the spirit willing, Chris? Yes? Okay.
I just want to say thank you, Chris, for
Thank
stepping
you.
up.
Yes, thank you.
Any further board comments?
Comments from the public? All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. We have to do this by resolution because of the organizational meeting at the beginning of the year, so it clears that up. All right, the next thing is COVID-19 mask mandates for administrative building. This is just a general discussion.
This is
I
just
saw today that Chester County has been designated a substantial increase. And I talked to a good friend of mine who is a transporter at Paoli Hospital, and he says that it looks like phase 2 over Paoli right now. So I think I'm wearing a mask indoors personally. Just saw that Greg Abbott vaccinated, got a positive test for COVID in Texas.
Yep.
So I went to a big car show a couple weekends ago, and I was one of probably 3% of the people in the whole wearing a mask. There were 10,000 people in the convention center. I'm going to be wearing a mask.
You do.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, Mr. Chairman, is it was a difficult decision. Last Monday, I sort of decided I was keeping tabs on it. It might have just come up substantial from the county, but the CDC actually had Chester County as substantial as of last week, not the weekend that just passed, the weekend before. again, I made a judgment call that, just for the safety of, everybody involved downstairs, staff, people coming in, that, we would reinstitute the mask requirements, and I'm keeping an eye on it on a weekly basis, and will update you as necessary, but, I just felt administratively it had to be done, and wanted to inform the board of that.
What are you gonna do if somebody won't wear a mask?
I will politely ask them to if, it becomes confrontational enough that, the answer is, John, I mean, I'm not gonna get in a physical altercation with somebody. I mean, if they don't wanna wear, if they really wanna be that kind of person, then, it is what it is. But I think at least it allows 99% of the people that come in here, for the time being, covered up for staff purposes.
Okay.
I don't think it's just for informational purposes and there's no motion.
Nope.
So, consider the Conservancy Board request for Tree City application. Yeah, that's, do we want, how do you want to handle this, Derek? You want to give?
Yeah, I will give a background. I wasn't at the Conservancy Board meeting, but apparently they would like to apply for Tree City USA. I can just, tell you from my background at my previous job, we were in the process of doing that. Ongoing, it is not I would say, a terribly big commitment. Most of the legwork is upfront with the initial application and things of that nature. So I know there's an Arbor Day event that has to be had every year, and the Conservancy Board has sort of outlined in this memo their reasoning, and it's sort of straightforward. There's no, I talked to Mark Miller about it because there was questions that came up. Does it affect us taking down dead trees, or do we have to do anything extra? Or from a staff perspective, no, there's nothing like that. It is, I would say, more than anything else, a badge of honor. But Mark and the Conservancy Board really did the legwork on this, I will say. So if there are outstanding questions that can't be answered and I can get them answered, we can put this on again. But there is a motion on the table.
We do have a member of the Conservancy here too,
okay.
Eric is here, but I can tell you that the
Sorry about that.
sustainability, the SAC actually was really driving this forward earlier this year, and I suggested to them that they actually reach out to Conservancy and have maybe a couple of folks go over and talk to the people at Conservancy, because they're over Conservancy, they're doing a lot of tree plantings and whatnot. It just seems to make sense to have it come out of the Conservancy Committee. So we already do most everything that needs done, except for really have the Arbor Day celebration of sorts, and that's really not that difficult to.
My only question was item standard 3, which was to establish a forestry program, and which is, the budget of $2 per capita, which would be around $36,000. It seems to me that our current tree planting and our tree removal and maintenance has to be fairly close to
It's
36.
well over
within
that.
it.
I think we budget, 35 a year just
Yeah.
for
Most
tree
most
well-
people that apply already have it in their budget. They don't even realize it.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear that
Yeah.
we're already,
It's a net
basically,
zero
we're already
cost.
doing all this except for the Arbor Day observation.
Yeah.
We'll add anyhow.
We ever have to?
Do we have any questions for Eric, since he's here from
Eric, do you have any
Conservancy?
comments?
Other than the designation or being a participant, is there something they do for us, meaning, it seems to me we've been pretty good stewards between the Conservancy Board and through Public Works of the care of our trees, both
Yeah.
safety as well as,
We get
Appreciate-
plaques.
Yeah.
We get plaques,
Bragging rights.
bragging rights and plaques.
Yeah, and so I don't know, but beyond that, do you have a sense of, do we get a magazine every 6 months, or,
So when we have,
I used to be a member of the Arbor Day Foundation, and they did have a magazine.
Okay.
Back when, I don't know if they still have it.
so apparently communities that receive Tree City status receive support that helps make celebration easy to plan and conduct. Here's what we'll receive in our first year: 2 road signs, a 4-foot by 6-foot Tree City flag, and a beautiful wall plaque.
Wow.
So there we go.
Do they have resources that we could use, that Conservancy Board, that you could go in and, look up resources regarding indigenous trees and plantings and?
They did at one time, I don't, again, it's been a while since I was a member, but they did at one time.
Imagine they have some research base.
Because there's no financial impact and we get bragging rights, and I'm all about trees because I think that.
And I love flags.
I'm totally, I'm what's a flag, so
I like
I'm
flags.
totally supportive of that.
And so, once we become a recognized, certified, what have you, member, is there an annual dues that we're paying?
I don't know if there are.
I don't believe there's an annual dues. No. I think it's literally just the biggest, like I said, the ongoing thing is the event, the Arbor Day
Because
celebration.
if there were, it would cut into the conservative budget, I wouldn't want to see that.
So
What did I say?
it could possibly,
Eric's like, what?
is there a possibility it could open some grant opportunities? It's
Well, that's
something
the other
that
thing. You
that
check the
Jason-
box. It's a good
Jason
one.
might be able to answer that. Mr. Chairman, I would, in light of our lighthearted discussion, I move that the board authorize township staff to submit a Tree City USA application for consideration by the Arbor Day Foundation.
I second that motion.
John, any further comment from the board? Any comment from the audience, participants? All those, I'm gonna call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Okay, East Goshen Township, Tree City, USA. Okay, consider that, that's Tree City, sorry, next page. Yeah, we have a financial security and land development, agreement for a new single-family home at 932 North Chester Road.
This was Mr. Chairman, this was a 2-lot subdivision back in 2016. It is a flag lot. It is a single-family home, pretty straightforward land development. And we're asking for the financial security and land development agreement approval.
Is this the one that, we looked at the, width of the driveway?
That was the width of the area for, they had to go to the zoning hearing board, right?
Yeah, it was
Because they were looking
26
for-
instead of 40.
Right, so that was approved and we're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reduced right away.
Mhm.
Cool.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the financial security and land development agreements for the development of 932 North Chester Road in accordance with the approved subdivision and land development plan.
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. Any further discussion? Comments from the public? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0.
I
Next.
hope it's another $1 million house.
Yeah, speaking of that, that I just noticed, when I came back from a little vacation, that they're cutting the road through for 34 houses off of Forest Lane called Troutbeck Farm. Troutbeck Farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be 34 homes, and by the way, I pulled up the plot plan. Guess what they have in the whole thing? Open space and walking trails. All right,
Wow.
there you go. That's not in our township though, so.
Yeah, I know.
Next thing is to consider supporting the efforts of the Pipeline Task Force in drafting a letter to the PUC. The situation here is that the county commissioners have expressed extreme alarm at the continued construction adjacent to the 80-plus-year-old active and 12-inch workaround pipes in West Whiteland. And the issue is that A, we want to support the county commissioners and our neighbors in West Whiteland, but also these are areas where our residents shop and work and recreate and drive through, so there's a danger to our own residents. So the Pipeline Task Force is requesting that we have staff and the task force submit a letter to the PUC in support of the Chester County letter and expressing our own individual, our specific concerns for East Goshen Township residents.
I'm on board with that.
Mr. Chairman, I move we support the Pipeline Task Force efforts to construct and send a letter to the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, similar in content to the letter sent from the Chester County Commissioners regarding ongoing concerns of sinkholes and other safety concerns in the West Whiteland area of Mariner East Pipeline.
Second the motion.
John, thank you, Michelle. Any further board discussion?
I'm going to make a comment here. I'm going to comment that while I was visiting SET, I did
Explain to them what SET is.
SET is Sunoco Energy Transfer in Houston. And I went down and I implored them right before I left. That was the last thing I did. I implored them to please stop flowing product while they were doing the hammering of the casing. I implored them, I begged them. I did the best I could. I figured having a face in front of them, it might be a little harder to say no. It was easy enough for them to say no, but I did try. So I really do support, we need to send a letter, we need to send it quickly. So I would hope that we'll be able to get that out this week.
People may be tired of hearing this, but you have to understand this 8-inch pipeline that was put in the ground in somewhere around 1932, which were the original easements created for the pipeline that's being installed now. That pipe was never intended to carry NGLs under high pressure. Not only did they change the content and the material of the pipeline, but they reversed the flow of it. The pipeline has leaked, famously in Morgantown, undetected, discovered by a resident landowner there. And every time I think about this pipeline, I close my eyes and picture somebody driving a Model A Ford. That's what people were driving when that pipeline went in the ground. Think about the technology, the absence of technology in that pipeline, and they're running NGLs through our densely populated communities. And they're doing construction in karst geography without doing proper looking at the geography of the karst in that area. It's a horrible situation.
Well, you tried, Michelle.
Wish we could get their attention, so that's all I'm gonna say.
I tried, I
all
really
right.
did.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle did a great effort, went down in person and toured the control room in Houston and asked a lot of hard questions and hopefully getting some assistance in safety and evacuation and emergency response plans in the future to be determined. So we're working on some things, and citizens and residents need to know that Pipeline Task Force and the board is working diligently.
So recognize your
Get some things done.
extra curricular,
That's right.
really exceptional effort to go down and do that, Michelle, your own accord. I think that was just terrific.
It needed to be done.
All right, any other board comments on the motion? Public comment? We call the question, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much. Anyone have any other matter under any other matter?
Not here.
Public comment? Anything from the public?
You just said one thing. My name's Robert Plummer.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Robert Plummer, 1339 Park Avenue. I was just trying to get an update on the reservoir.
Oh, you Milltown
The
Dam project?
dam?
Yeah.
Derek is our new, recent manager to replace Rick Smith. I don't know how up you are on the status of the Milltown Dam Park project.
You know, obviously, and I think it was the first meeting in July or the last meeting in June, we approved Gannett Fleming to go ahead and get started on it. Right now, I would say it's in the pre-con paperwork stage, if you will. We're doing a lot of preliminary crossing off the list of sort of the preliminary things we have to do with the agencies, FEMA things with flood maps and DEP sign-offs and things of that nature. As far as when actual construction gets started, I just asked this question the other day to Eric, who is our Gannett Fleming rep, and we're probably looking at sometime closer to the new year as far as when the actual construction will take place. But it's not, just to be clear too, it's not, and I was actually not privy to this, but it's not a full breach like Hershey's Mill Dam. It is the partial breach lowering it and making it a low hazard dam versus a high hazard, which is classified as now. But if your question is just pertaining to when construction starts, it's probably gonna be closer to beginning of 2022.
Spring probably.
Yeah.
The Gannett Fleming is the engineering firm that's doing all the workforce through construction, inspections, et cetera.
But
Correct,
to
yes.
also to be clear though, too, even though it seems like we're not doing anything, the process of not doing anything is actually allowing the land that's there to return to a more natural state. And everything is supposed to have time to dry out, if you will, and get back to that more normal state before they can really proceed. So it seems like there's nothing happening, but
This seems like a good,
It just
there's
says,
a lot of mosquitoes
yeah.
that come around my house.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I would say it's gonna be a couple of years until we really see the transformation of it. So it would be, frankly, I think it's gonna be closer to the fall of '23 by the time we really see the transformation show itself.
Oh, when
Not that
vegetation
construction is
grows.
gonna take place, but
well, the vegetation and whatnot that's gonna come
Yeah.
back and everything, yeah, I
and some of
agree,
the park-like improvements.
absolutely, yeah.
And Mark Gordon and I get weekly email updates from Gannett Fleming, so they are definitely doing everything they need to do to cross the boxes off for the preliminary construction issues, again, such as the flood map and getting authorization. I mean, dealing with dam safety at DEP in itself is not an easy task, so they're on top of it, and feel free to reach out to me and administratively keep in touch with me and ask it how it's going. I'm more than happy to give you updates as well, because again, we get updates on a weekly basis from Gannett Fleming.
And I think a periodic update on the website is good on the Middletown status, to just, it may not be something every month, but as we get closer to construction, it will be. So then if nothing else, maybe, short of having to come here or talk directly to staff, you may have stuff on the website.
And Hershey's Mill.
Well, Hershey's Mill Dam Park is,
Actually, to that point, Mike, and I don't know how close the gentleman is to this, but they're actually just got a email today, and there will be a letter going out to residents because of the new revised floodplain map that was established during this project, so.
for Middletown Dam.
For Middletown Dam, so,
Interesting.
yeah, proximity, so I think it's within
Probably
the,
get something, Mr. Plum, if
Yeah.
you're close by.
Yeah, he is close, but he's on
yeah,
Park
so the residents right around the dam, they'll get communication fairly shortly.
This seems like, so I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming out.
Some of it's welcome to local
And,
government.
yeah.
We move. That's the face of the bottom turtle. Correspondence, I have three things. Number one, I'd like we recognize a letter written to us, to me from David Stein, who's president of Wagontown Volunteer Fire Company. Apparently, we had a big pile of dirt, and they needed a big pile of dirt to fill in their swimming pool. So we donated that, and they sent us a very nice letter thanking us for our cooperation in doing that. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure out there, all read the Pennsylvania Township News. But in August, there's a very nice article about inter-municipal cooperation, where, for instance, we do a lot of our own paving, or most of our own paving of the streets, and sometimes we need extra trucks. So we don't want to buy trucks and have them sitting around idle, so we borrow trucks from other townships. Sometimes they borrow our trucks with drivers, and these are nice intermunicipal agreements without contracts, without all the issues. It's just a good old cooperation, mutual support between municipalities, and it's a wonderful thing. And it was a really nice article mentioning our public works folks and the cooperation that we've extended to other adjacent townships, and it's very nice.
And it has pictures too.
Yeah, and it has pictures.
Eric would like pictures.
And the final thing is, Russ Frank asked, he wrote an email, asked to acknowledge correspondence in, I think he was basically thanking the board for their consideration of the alternative route on the Paley Pike Trail. So we'll acknowledge that email as well.
And the only other thing I would mention is that our fellow supervisor, Marty Shane, continues to convalesce, if you will, and so keep him in your thoughts. He's trying to make his way back to his feet and back to an active status here, but he's still got some road to cover. So keep Marty Shane in your thoughts.
I'll entertain the motion for adjournment.
Well, I made that motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion?
No, I'll second that too.
I'll
Okay.
second. It's
All
been
those in
seconded
favor,
again.
aye.
Aye.
None opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you folks for attending.
Papers to sign, we're busy.
So it's this Friday, this York event. I have it listed, but all this stuff and then just what you just said, I'm thinking, I know you're able to have, who else will be there?
Yeah. Amazing.
That was really cool.
Yes,
Oh, yes, Chris.
I sent the guys,
I believe that
All right.
was, Phil.
Maybe.
I didn't get a chance
Sort
to
of what you're running.
It'll say. Yeah.
That was Phil and Eric, I was here, right?
Yes, I know the neighbor on the right side most of the time. We're gonna come in that way.